Bonjour, good morning. So it looks like everyone's ready and not eating anymore, so we'll go ahead and get started a little early. So my name is Derek Harp, and I'm the founder and chairman of the Control System Cybersecurity Association, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a minute. And today we're going to talk about just some of the results from our annual report. So this is just available. We just finished this year's. It's based on research mostly done last year, gathering all the data and then writing the analysis over the last 3 or 4 months. And so the report is free to download. We do have, it's possible to get print copies, and those have some cost. But the PDF is downloadable today on our site, and I'll share the address for that. So the report, the study, and our association all are aligned around what we're calling control system cybersecurity. We broadly define that across 18 verticals. So anything with pumps and valves and actuators and moving cyber to physical parts, that's in the scope of the study in our association. And so we have building controls in there, all the traditional things like gas and oil and manufacturing that people think of, but also medical devices, anything except traditional IT networks. And so our association is designed to support the security practitioners that are focused exclusively on control-related systems. So the annual report is a joint project, and our title sponsor and great supporter of the report is KPMG. I have my colleague Hussein Al-Shadoki here from Saudi Arabia, KPMG. He is on the steering committee, so he's one of the members that also contributes quite a bit of sweat equity to this annual process that leads to the report. So this is our first time. We've known each other virtually now for some time. First time to actually be together in person, so that's kind of cool. So C2AI, the control system that I started, the association, is a nonprofit. We started it about 8 years ago, just a meeting in one city, and then it was a meeting in a second city, and then a third and a fourth, and it's sort of taken off. And so again, it is dedicated to recruiting more people into this particular workforce, and then supporting people from entry level to chief level in their professional development. We've had over 24,000 people, almost 25,000 now sign up. For years, that was just organically. It's really only had a dedicated team, including myself, for the last couple of years. It was something we were all sort of doing on the side of other businesses and ventures in the space. But now there are a group of us focused exclusively on this, largely just based on demand. The problem has been certainly confirmed to be global in nature. There are regional differences in approach, but the problem is the same around the world, and people are starved for peer-to-peer exchange of best practices and mapping to standards and how someone else is doing something. So regardless of the vertical, there's so much we can learn from each other. So the annual report, again, is sort of a year-long project. We are just now kicking off the 2023 process, which will lead to next year's report. And then the new one is just now available for download. The goal of this is to create a decision support tool. What are my peers doing? What are their priorities? Where are they seeing the largest ROI? Hussein and I are going to just share a dozen slides, some of the data from the report, and not even really have the time to go into everything that's on each of the slides. And the rest is obviously in greater length in the report, but just want to give you some sneak peek and walk away thought process around some of the things that are in there. We're now also able to do year-on-year comparison. We're only at the beginning of that because we've only had 2 years of report. But the goal will be to see trending over time as well and be able to share that. So the little correlation symbol is sort of where we're able to correlate between years or between other sorts of respondent types that we'll get into. Oh, and if you want to get involved in the 2023 process, we're looking to get more international involvement every year. Just email us there and we'll get back with you. So again, you can download it there off of our main site. And then you can purchase from our publisher if you want the actual physical print copies. Okay, so KPMG is the title sponsor, providing financial support to our organization and a lot of sweat equity with team members like Hussein. But the report is also sponsored and supported by some of our other partners. We could not do this at all. Our organization benefits from the commitments by these kinds of companies. This is a little bit about who participated. We had 580 respondents this time, so it was an increase from the previous year. You can see that it's 58% in North America, but between 2020 and 2022, we're seeing more participation internationally, which is definitely, we want to see more of that. And you can see sort of the distribution regionally. As far as that goes, it is a highly educated decision-making, as far as percentage. Over 50% have a what we call a leadership title. We break that into sort of 3 levels: manager all the way up to chief level or C-level titles, and quite a bit of either decision-making on budgets or influencing of budgets. I wanted to share one other demographic. We saw on a year-on-year comparison an increase in women who participated in this. This was sort of interesting. Don't know if that indicates anything yet about the overall workforce, or whether we're just, as we get more diversity and more word out on the survey and more international participation, but we'll see what next year's data says about this. We know that the industry is dominated certainly by men, and so it's really good to see more participation from the women team members. And the age distribution, I thought that was interesting as well. There's other demographic information in the back of the report, sort of to give people sort of an insight into who took this, who participated. So this is the first of the data slides we thought we'd share. There's a lot here, obviously, but I was going to single out that phishing is still a huge problem, obviously. No surprise for anybody in the industry, but this just confirms, again, of all the different sorts and types of threat actors and attacks and threat vectors, good old phishing and human compromise still wins out. In fact, insiders, we categorized this into 2 categories: negligent insiders, or malicious insiders, and negligent insiders. That's number 1. So I love talking about nation states as well as anyone, and the exotic tools and exotic incidents. It's really not statistically where the biggest threat opportunities are coming from. It's coming from people in our enterprises and organizations, whether it's intentional or not. So I think in thinking about prioritization and things we need to do, which we'll talk about some of those steps, that's who I've got in mind. This was top 5 priorities. There are more. They just singled out the top 5, and safety wins out. So I think we see a strong correlation between the establishment of safety in the industrial business verticals. That's obviously strongly built in over decades, and so that's still a major motivation. Number 1 is protecting the company's own team, and number 2 is protecting public safety, whether that be consumers of products that people may be making, or neighbors. If you think of chemical plants and things like that, people that live near certain sorts of processes. After that, protecting continuous operations. We know that's being disrupted by ransomware. Even non-sexy verticals like cardboard manufacturing, if you're down for X amount of time, it's quite costly, and so those ransoms are still being paid. Protecting trade secrets and protecting product quality. I had a great conversation here yesterday with pharmaceutical leader, OT cyber leader for pharmaceutical, and we talked about just the concerns around anybody being able to interdict or change anything in the manufacturing process when we think in terms of things like drugs. It's obviously something that they're concerned about, as we would be as consumers. So those are the top 5 priorities. And then this is sort of how one of the ways the report is oriented. We asked all the respondents to respond, to self-attest as to the level of program maturity. So 1 being a very immature program, we call that firefighting mode. No established process and procedures, just reacting to things. Unfortunately, there's still quite a few companies in that. You can see sort of it's a bell curve. 16% are in that level 1. And level 5 being very sophisticated with repeatable processes and documented procedures. And that's also a small group, only 9%, which makes sense. Most people haven't been able to obtain that. And you can see in the middle, in level 3 is where the most of the respondents are. So this is important because we do compare some of these next data points as to how high maturity responders versus low maturity responders were different.
Thank you, Dirk. So starting with that pre-acquisition assessment, we're looking at organizations between low maturity, which is the level 1, and the high maturity. This is how we're doing the comparison. Oh, thank you, Dirk. So we've asked them, how are you guys identifying the potential risks to the products which you purchase for your environment? And most of the organizations are doing technical testings like vulnerability assessments, penetration testings. A lot of organizations are focusing on complying and making sure their OEMs are complying with the ISO 6243. So they're doing the compliance test on them before they acquire the product. We've seen a lot of internal reviews of the vendor product and the services risk profile to make sure that they identify those risks before they bring it to their environment and their infrastructure, just to make sure that they keep it under monitoring or to make the decision before they do
that. This one is about assessments. This was interesting. When we first looked at it, in the middle there, you see annual assessments went down. And we know anecdotally that's not likely. Assessments are on the rise. Then we look further in the data. If you see the bottom three, frequency has increased. So annual went down, but semi-annual or even quarterly and then even monthly are on the increase. So clearly the higher maturity organizations also correlate to that, are doing more assessments. So that's just sort of the ground truth. More awareness, more having a third party come in and assess where they are.
I think I'll just move here. It's much easier. Yeah. So I hope everyone can see. So basically, a lot of organization, as a post-assessment, what exactly are they doing after the assessment? Are they doing the assessment and that's it? They're just checking the box and we're done. We know exactly where the gaps. But we've found out that more of the high maturity organizations are actually taking those assessments into considerations, real considerations. First of all, they look into their cybersecurity strategy and updates. They make sure it aligns with their business. They are mitigating those risks which they have identified throughout the maturity assessment. They continuously conduct a penetration testing to make sure those assessments are effectively utilized, to make sure that they have closed the gaps already, they have prioritized their initiative cards, they have, and many organizations, especially on the high maturity, they are going towards procuring new technologies. Some organizations, they can do that, like the large organizations, but the low maturity ones are not able to. That's where we see the increase on the response of procuring new technologies, getting rid of the legacy systems which they have.
Yeah, there's a number of responses that always give caution when I'm talking about this. It's not prescriptive. Do all this. Every organization has different financial capabilities, and so it's really just this is what people are doing, and people look for that pattern. If they're looking for justification, they're making a business case to potentially who they report to or to the board of directors. We're hoping this report will help them make that business case to say this is what other people are doing. But it's not a one-size-fits-all. We know that. We know a lot of organizations are different in their capabilities and financial support. Wait a second. Okay, so we also asked what the greatest obstacles were. What's getting in people's way in implementing programs and being successful. And there's clearly multiple factors that contribute to that. But the reigning supreme answer is people. We don't have enough bodies, and we don't have enough qualified bodies. When we start talking about people who understand operational technology and resiliency and safety and reliability, that's the watchwords that they're comfortable with. They've been working in operational environments, but also know cybersecurity. We've limited the field right there to the number of qualified people. Job recs are open longer than they should be. There's HR misalignment pay bans. People are trying to hire positions but are restricted in what they can pay based on the band that the company's set for that level, but it's not appropriate for what people are making in this space. So there's just a whole lot of corporate work to be done to be able to bring people in, but also we've got to do a lot more to develop more people to begin with, candidates that need to be developed, either internally or externally to be recruited to organizations. So even though other things are there, financial support is clearly an issue. The big one is people. Budgets. We ask about budgets, and what was interesting this year, we'll see what the multi-year trending, another year's worth of data will be interesting. This showed that the larger increases were down. The 30 and 50% increases were down. I'm not sure yet. I'm ready to say what I think this indicates, but it could be an erosion of the higher growth, and we saw a bigger increase in more moderate growth, 10%. So there may have been some bigger expenditures in the previous couple of years and some pullback at a certain level. We'll have to look, deeper into what is indicated there, and then again see what happens next year.
Thanks, Dirk. So what we've seen as the best return of investments to most organizations, especially the ones with the low maturity, they're focusing, and this is exactly what they've realized, we are not, as IT and business corporate, aligning with the operational technology personnel, operational technology plants presidents or maintenance engineers. They are not talking the same language. They're not acquainted together. And that is exactly what they've realized. That's why we see the high spike here, that they need to improve the communication between the two both. The other thing is the patch management and vulnerability management continue to be a very important topic as a best return investments for high maturity organizations, and that's what the report indicated from the responses which we received.
So here's a slide on planned investments. So this is looking forward versus what they've already been doing. Yeah, and so what we're seeing here is the lower maturity. It's interesting, vulnerability management was much higher. Our interpretation of that may just be that the higher maturity organizations have maybe already made progress in that area and moved on to things like network segmentation. But that was sort of interesting that popped out. Clearly, network segmentation is a key. We're seeing that anecdotally. We're seeing that in other polls that we do during some of our live events. That's an emphasis, and the more mature organizations are absolutely working hard to put more network segmentation in place. Supply chain security. This is another topic that we cover in some of our events. We did a big event on it recently, and that is more in the domain of the sophisticated organizations that have the bandwidth. I think less mature organizations are probably focused on lower hanging fruit, but people are looking now, especially after the incidents of the last 18 months, at their supply chain issues, and we're inheriting the vulnerabilities of the equipment that we're bringing in. That equipment has equipment made by someone else. That equipment sometimes has software made by someone else. Where is all that? What is this provenance? And so people are getting more serious about that, and we'll probably see an increase to that, I would suspect, next year. So here is, we singled this out too today. We thought this was interesting. The higher maturity organizations are adopting managed security services to a higher degree. This was definitely also an increase on a year-on-year basis from the previous year's report. And they are also doing monitoring. So we see this in our data from this report, but also other data that we've been doing, or research we've been doing, that certainly monitoring of these industrial or control-related networks is becoming considered best practice for sure. Less sophisticated organizations may not be doing it, and that could be for a variety of reasons, including budget. But it's, I think for anybody that is looking for justification, that's the emergent best practice, is to do some form of monitoring. And luckily there are numerous companies that are now providing industrial, safe to run in the industrial environment or control environment monitoring solutions. Security awareness training.
So when we asked about the control system and the cybersecurity awareness training programs for the organizations which have low maturity or high maturity, we see the low maturity not integrating the IT cybersecurity awareness with the OT, and we see more of the high maturity organizations are focusing on separating this. They realize that they need to have a focused culture awareness program for their OT plans. They're not going to be grasping the same topics that they should be delivering to the IT personnel. And the major one, which many organizations, which has control systems, they're not doing awareness programs. Some of them, they're just doing the programs only to check the boxes and to make sure that they're complying with regulations, but they're not really investing in their people. They're not increasing the awareness among the culture, among the people. And one of the things which I would like to mention, people is the most important assets. And it's very bad to see some organizations are not realizing this.
I think this one was particularly concerning, the number of companies that aren't doing anything. When we know that the threat actor, number one threat actor are the negligent, non-malicious insiders. So you put those two together, that's obviously a significant risk factor. People that are not intending to do harm, but are still. So we've got to raise the bar. I think there's a lot to be learned from how successful safety culture has been implemented over decades, and then we have to sort of have a mindset of building a security culture and mindset, and we got to get everybody on board. All the statistics everywhere sort of support that you know, we could adopt the latest and greatest technology, but if we still haven't brought the hygiene up of our employees, of our team members, our fellows, we're still going to have problems.
Since we do have the time, I just want to mention one of the stories that I've seen in one of the organizations. Basically, they've invested in implementing technologies to raise their awareness. They have done a great process. They've taught their people, but still mistakes are happening. Phishing emails are getting through their organizations, whether it's to the IT network or to the OT plans. So what they've done, and that's exactly what I liked, to be honest, they've brought a psychologist to be embedded into their program, to understand the behavior of the people, analyze the behavior of their employees. Why are you guys still tricked or phished? While we have invested big time in technologies and in training you, they have seen a tremendous change. It is sometimes a behavior analysis which you need to do to understand the people so you can adjust the program to increase that maturity.
So let's see. So that's, we could take some Q&A now. That's the end of sort of prepared comments. I thought I also maybe should have done this already. Pass this around if you want to just leaf through it. These are sort of the proof copies. We just got them a couple days before coming here. We haven't actually done a print run yet, so we just want to look at the layout and sort of the different print options. So again, you can download it for free. It's supported by our partners, and we want to get it out there. Yeah, so feel free to connect to me if you've got any questions about the report, this year's report, or previous years, or next year's. And if you want to help in the effort of getting the survey out, we're working on the 2023 survey now. It'll largely be similar to previous year's survey, but we do a review and look at question appropriateness and whether there's anything we haven't asked that we should ask. So if you look at the report and you've got ideas, inputs, things you think we should ask, we're also going to launch another survey process and report process delving specifically into workforce issues, how long job positions are open, misalignment with pay bands, you know, where people are coming from, where the best qualified candidates are coming from. So we hope that'll be our next knowledge product, is a deeper look at the human being challenges that that we're facing in industry. So any questions about the annual report? Don't be shy, we've got time. All right, well, if not, we'll stand around here. Yeah, please.
Thank you. One of the slides you showed was about how often there was security assessments in ICS systems, and one answer was it was done annually. Question is, what is exactly behind this security assessment? Is it that company tells that they just check their backups? It counts as an annual system security assessment. That's a question. What's behind this?
Yeah, that's a good question. You can do an assessment or you can do an assessment. And so it's true, there could be some variability on what people are doing there. In this case, I don't think we asked a detailed question. I think we just asked about periodicity, how often they're doing it. So there could be, some response bias there. There were more questions around, like, what do you do afterwards? So we're seeing some of the details of what people are doing. I think that was. Yeah, post-assessment actions. I think there are some other questions that may be in the comprehensive report around what people are doing. We might ask, what are you doing during an assessment? I think that's in there as well. What sort of elements are included in your assessment, now that I think about it. This was just the what are you doing afterwards one. Any other questions? This is today we selected some of the data. There's obviously a lot more in there. Hopefully one or more of the topics we cover will be useful to you. And again, we welcome feedback. And if you find anything that we can make this better, that's sort of a continual annual process for us now. Anything else? Who's managing cybersecurity for an OT environment in this group? Couple? Okay. All right. Thank you very much.